Yo, what's up everybody? So here, let's go again. Let's keep going with our, in this lecture part of libraries and the course of the programming of Python of Harvard. Okay, so this program here is free. So if you want to learn Python by Harvard, this is a good opportunity, I think. So let's go.
To interpret a program I've written. And it turns out by convention, what Python does is it stores in sys.argv the name of the file that you're executing or interpreting, followed by any number of other words that you typed. So all this time, we could have been accessing the name of the program, which frankly isn't all that interesting, but we can also now access words that are typed after that prompt as well. But of course, if I don't type anything in, what might happen here? This might be naive of me to assume that there's always going to be something at location 1 in sys.argv. Let me go ahead and try this. Python, name.py, and no, I'm not giving you my name because at this point I might not even know that you want my name to be typed, so let me hit enter now, and uh-oh, we see now an error. A so-called exception in Python. This one's a new one. This one's an index error that elaborates list index out of range. And turns out this is actually one of the most common mistakes in programming, whether using a list in Python or arrays or vectors in other languages, is to try to access some element that does not exist. You try to go too far to the left or you try to go too far to the right in this object that is just a list of some values. So of course, the mistake here is that I'm assuming there's going to be something at location 1 when really it's location 0 that's the only one that has a value. But fixing this is not going to amount to doing bracket 0 because now if I go ahead and rerun this program with no other words after name.py, it says, hello, my name is name.py, which is fine if we're making a name tag for the program, but that's not, of course, what my goal here is instead. So if the fix is not just to change the 1 to a 0, how else might I handle this error? How else might I handle this error? This index error that happens if the user just doesn't remember to or doesn't know to type their actual name at the prompt.
We could always put an exception into the program, say if there is if there's nothing at location 1, we just come out to say, well, okay, we haven't got a parameter or something. But if there is, you continue along with the program.
Perfect. So if I might simplify, we can try to execute this line of code, except if there's an error, we'll deal with it in some other way. Yeah. Now, ideally, and once I'm a strong enough programmer, I would have anticipated this and written the following code from the get-go. But when you're learning, it's certainly reasonable to see an error. Oh, I didn't realize I should detect that, and then go back and improve your code. But of course, if you read the documentation, you ingrain some of the lessons learned from the past, you'll get into the habit of trying and checking for some of these exceptions yourself. So let me solve this in one possible way, as you proposed here. Let's try to handle this exception as follows. Let me go ahead now, and instead of just blindly calling this print line, let me try to print out, hello, my name is such and such, except if there is an issue, specifically an index error, then what do I want to go ahead and do? I'm going to say something like too few arguments. I could be more explanatory than that, but for now I'm just going to explain to the user that they gave me too few arguments, too few words at the prompt. So now it's still not going to work in quite the way I want. I'm still not going to be able to generate their name tag, but at least they're not going to see some cryptic error message and think that they themselves broke the program. Let me go ahead now and run python of name.py, enter, and too few arguments. OK, let me go ahead now and do python of name.py and type in my name, David, and now we're back in business. And I see that my name is on the screen too. But strictly speaking, I don't have to try to do this. I could actually be a little more defensive in writing this code. And maybe I could check whether or not the user has indeed provided a name or multiple names at the prompt so as to give them more refined error messages as well. So how might I do this? Well, let me go and undo the exception handling I've added. And why don't I instead more modestly try to do this? Let me go ahead and introduce a conditional here. If the length of sys.argv is less than 2, or equivalently equal to just one value, but I'll just stick with less than 2 for now, then go ahead and print out too few arguments. So I want ultimately 2 arguments. I want the name of the program at location 0, and I want the name of the human at location 1. So that's a total of 2 arguments. So if I have fewer than 2 arguments, let's tell the user with this print line, if the length of sys.argv is, say, greater than 2, like they typed in too many words at the prompt, well, let's tell them print, quote unquote, too many arguments. Else, if they did get it right and they gave me exactly 2 arguments, else let's go ahead and print what I actually care about. All right, let me go down to my terminal window here and run python of name.py, and voila, a completely different type of error. This one, a syntax error, which we've seen in the past. Now, a syntax error, recall, is mea culpa, like I messed up here and I wrote invalid syntax, and so no amount of conditionals or exception handling is really going to catch this one. I need to go back and just get my program to work because it's not running at all. Well, let me go up here and see. Line 4 is the issue, and indeed, it looks like I have an unterminated string here. I need to go ahead and now add this double quote. So let me go ahead now, and with that red herring gone, let me rerun python of name.py and hit enter, and now we see too few arguments. Okay, maybe it wants my full name. Let me go ahead now and run python of name.py, David Malan, typing in both words after the name of the file and hit enter. And now, of course, it's too many arguments. Fine, now I'll oblige and do python of name.py and just David, and there we have it, my name tag printed on the screen. So strictly speaking, we don't have to handle exceptions if we can be a little smarter about it and just check for the things that we're worried about, especially if we want to give the user more refined advice. We don't want to just tell them, no, something went wrong, or we don't want to pass. We want to tell them, no, that's too few. Or, no, that's too many. We have conditionals in our vocabulary already via which we can now express that.
Okay, let me try to use that sheet because all we need to do is just practice, baby. So you need to do the same. Oh, baby, no. I'll use if len. Sys argument. This is very like a weird code. I don't know if you're gonna use that. Oh, wait a second. I need to go to English. And is greater than 2. And here print too few arguments. And here I will use elif len if the len of sys argument is greater than 2. Too many arguments, and else print hello. My name is and sys argument 1. Yeah. Wait, something's wrong here? What is wrong? Oh, I didn't use the code here. Yes. Something wrong here? What is it? What is wrong here? Print. I have a code. I have parentheses, square brackets, and what is wrong here? Print parentheses. I don't know what is wrong here. I need to use a comma here. If I execute this here. Let me check. Sys arg. Yeah. What the? Yeah, I think what the? Lens shoe? I did the same error here. Argv. Yeah. What the? What? Oh. Oh, if I run this shit, I cannot. Okay, I understand. Because I cannot like write the. Okay. No, I need to like run with something writing there. I need to type before I run, but I cannot do because I just can't run here. So let's see. I don't know.
That. Well, let me pause here and see if there's any questions now on how we handled the error before with the index error, or how now we're just proactively avoiding all index errors altogether by just checking first, is it too few, is it too many, or is it exactly what we want?
Hiya, thank you. So I was wondering, you touched upon kind of using your full name. Could we then, is there a way going forwards that perhaps we have people that want their full names and want just their first name, that we separate that into like, oh, this person has full name, this person has just the one name?
Absolutely, and allow me to propose we come back to that support for multiple names. But indeed, we could do that. And I should note too, though, we can support full names right now if I do this. Instead of typing in David space Malin, which is problematic because, again, by definition of how argv works, each word ends up in a specific location in the list. But if I add quotes, single quotes or double quotes at the command line, now Python will view this as two total things, the name of the file and this full name. And now when I hit enter, I don't see the quotes. The whole thing is passed in as my full name. And if I want to adapt this further for multiple people, we'll be able to do that as well. Other questions now on this version with if, elif, else, or on except before?
Hi, sir. I want to ask you, can we use multiple else statement?
Can you use multiple else's statements? No. Else is the last catch-all statement that you can have. You can have multiple elif statements in the middle, but not multiple else's.
Okay.
All right, well, let's turn our attention back now to this code and see if we can't refine it a bit more by adding in some additional functionality that we get with modules like the sys module. One of the things I don't love about this version of the code, even though arguably it is now correct, is that the essence of my program, which is just to print out the name tag, is kind of relegated to this else clause. And that's fine. Logically, it's correct. But generally speaking, there's something nice about keeping all of your error handling separate from the code that you really care about. Having all of these ifs, elifs, perhaps at the top of your code that are checking to make sure that all of the data is as expected. But then it would be nice, if only for design's sake, not to sort of hide in this else statement the actual code that you care about. I would prefer, for instance, to do something logically like this. I could check for errors up top, and then down here, print the name tags. It would be nice if those are sort of distinct blocks of code, all of which are here left aligned. But there's a problem with what I've just done here. Logically, what bug did I just introduce by getting rid of the else and introducing line 10 on its own with no indentation outside of the conditional? What bug have I just introduced? What mistake, to be clear?
Name error.
Ironically, it's a name error, but not a name error exception. It's an error with my name, but I think you're frozen for me. It's going to raise an exception because even though I'm checking the length of sys.argv up top, and even though I'm checking it again for being greater than 2, not just less than 2, but greater, I'm still then blindly and incorrectly assuming it's now going to exist. So just to be clear, if I run python of name.py and I don't type any arguments, I've got too few, I think I'm going to see that I have too few, but I'm also going to see that same exception. At the very top of my terminal Windows output, there's my error message, too few arguments. But again, on line 10, I blindly proceed to still index into my list at location 1, which does not exist. So it turns out there's a better way to handle errors like this, especially if you're writing a program in Python that's just meant to run briefly and then exit anyway. But maybe we could start to exit prematurely if the program itself just can't proceed. If the user has not given us the data we want, perhaps we should just exit the program earlier than we might otherwise. So let me go ahead and do this. Let me go ahead and remove my comments so as to focus only on the code here. And let me propose that instead of just printing quote unquote too few arguments, I'm going to use one other function that comes with the sys module. I'm going to go ahead and call sys.exit. And as the name suggests, it's going to do exactly that. With the system's help, it's going to exit my program then and there on line 4. Why is that okay? Well, if you gave me too few arguments, I have nothing more to say to you, the user. I might as well exit a bit prematurely. And I can do this as well on line 6. Let's go ahead and not just print that, but sys.exit, quote unquote, too many arguments. Print out that message and just exit right there. Now I can trust that by the time I get to line 8, every error condition has been checked for, and so it's safe for me to assume that there is, in fact, an item at location 1 in sys.argv. So let me go ahead now and run this. Python of name.py, enter, too few arguments. But I'm back at my prompt. Nothing more has happened. Let me run it again. Python of name.py, David Malin with no quotes, enter. Too many arguments is now printed here. Finally, Python of name.py, just David, enter. Hello, my name is David. So we have then in sys 2 forms of functionality now. We have access.
Wait a second. If the length is too many, going to be too many arguments. And when the grade is 2 letters, I think. If it is less than 2 letters, the system gonna show the message too few arguments. And if this is not, if these 2 conditions didn't use these 2 conditions, the program gonna say, hello, my name is something the user typed there, I think. So if the user typed the right thing, I win it, the program gonna say, hello, my name is something. If the user does anything else about that, the program gonna show David. My name is David, I think.
Access to this variable, sys.argv, this argument vector that gives me all of the words that were typed at the prompt, including the program's own file name. And it turns out, if we read further in the documentation, there's an exit function that can take different types of inputs, but if I pass it a string like this, it will indeed print that string for me and then exit from my program then and there. Questions now on exiting from programs like this. To be clear, all of this time, once Python gets to the bottom of your file, it's going to exit anyway, so I'm using sys.exit now just to make sure that I exit earlier than otherwise.
My question is about the sys.argv. So is that capable of accepting or taking multiple elements at once? Let's say, for example, Python name.py, David Malin, I'm a male, 20 years old. And if, let's say, I only want to access your name, which is at the first index, and then your age is, say, at the 6th index, can I say sys.rv1 and another one for 6 to access what I just want? Is that possible for sys.rv?
Short answer, yes, I think, if I understand your question correctly, whereby you're proposing to have many words at the end of the command and you want to access those individual words. Absolutely. At some point, it gets a little fragile, I would say, if you're typing so many words at the prompt that the order really matters. And so it turns out there's a lot of programs and there's functionality in Python that can allow you to provide those values like name or age or any number of other fields in any order you want, but pass in a bit more information textually that tells the program how you want to use it. So in short, what you're describing is possible. And let me do a small incarnation of it as follows. Let me propose that we go back to my code here, and let's propose that we actually now want to support multiple values at the prompt. So there's going to be no such thing as too many arguments. Suppose that I want to generate name tags not just for David, but for David, for Carter, for Rongshin, for others in the group who all want their name tags as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to get rid of my elif condition because I don't want to limit the maximum number of words that are typed at the prompt anymore. I instead want to iterate over every name at the prompt. So I'm going to say this. For arg in sys.argv, go ahead and print out, this time, arg. So what am I doing here? Well, even though the syntax is a little different, the idea is the same as before when we've had loops. I'm using a for loop to iterate over a list. The list in question here is sys.argv. Arg is a variable that I'm creating on the fly. The for loop is going to make sure that the first time through this loop, arg is set to the first word on the command line. The second time through the loop, Python's going to make sure that arg is now set to the second thing on the command line, and so forth. That's just how a for loop works. It updates the variable for us. I don't have to call it arg. I could call it name, so long as I change it to name in both places, but arg is reasonable if I'm iterating over arguments more generally. If I now run this program, though, unfortunately, there's a little bit of a bug. Even if I type in David and Carter and Rongshin, I'm not going to get just 3 name tags. In your mind, does anyone see the bug I'm about to trip over? It's not a huge deal if I've got enough name tags to go around, but I'm going to be wasting one because this is going to print not 3 but 4 name tags, whereby the first contains the name of the program itself. Maybe not a big deal. Maybe that's the sticker we don't bother handing out, but it's wasteful, and it does look wrong. So how could we get access to not all 4 elements of argv, but just a slice of argv? And this is actually a technical term. In Python and some other language, wasting one, because this is going to print not 3.
Why there's a name.py in sysarg, because the sysarg is 0, and the 0 is name of the name.py.
But 4 name tags, whereby the first contains the name of the program itself. Maybe not a big deal. Maybe that's the sticker we don't bother handing out, but it's wasteful, and it does look wrong. So how could we get access to not all 4 elements of argv, but just a slice of argv? And this is actually a technical term. In Python and some other languages, to take a slice of a list means to take a subset of it. Maybe from the beginning, maybe the middle, maybe the end. But a slice is a subset of a data structure like a list. Well, how do I actually do this in code? Well, in Python, it's actually very easy to take a slice of a list, that is a subset thereof. You can simply do this. At the end of the list name, sys.argv in this case, you can use square brackets. And then in those square brackets, you can specify the start and the end of the list that you want to retain. I want to start at element 1, not 0. I want to start at element 1, and I want to just go to the end. So I'm actually going to omit a second number altogether. It's not necessary to have a second number, but I do need that colon because this is going to give me a slice of the list. It's going to give me a slice of the list that starts at location 1, not 0, and the colon and then a blank just means it's going to give me everything else. So this is equivalently going to slice off the first element of the list and give me a new list that contains just those 3 human names, not the name of the file itself. Let me try running this again. I'm going to run Python of name.py, David, Carter, Rongshin. This time, hopefully, I'm going to get 3 and only 3 name tags. Hitting enter, and indeed, I've done now just this. So again, using some relatively simple syntax in Python, we can use square brackets not just to go to specific elements like bracket 0 or bracket 1. We can also get subsets of the list, slices of the list, by doing bracket something colon something, where each of those somethings is a number, the beginning or the end, and they're optional, depending on whether you want all of them or just some. Any questions now on this version, which adds the loop and these slices with that new syntax?
Can we slice starting from the end of the argument vector?
You can. You can slice something from the end of the argument vector, and this might blow one's mind a little bit. Let me go ahead and do this. Let's see. Let me go ahead and do -1 at the end.
When you say argument vector, I don't know what is argument vector, honestly. Argument vector. Let me check. Answer me, baby. Is the argv argument vector? argv. I thought the name was argv and not argument vector. So as I said before, when you run the program, you're gonna type something in the same time you're running the program. So I cannot use this because I don't know how to run this here and type something in the same time. I don't know how to do that. So fuck it. Let's go.
Using a negative number here and running the same command, we've just uninvited Rongshin from receiving a name tag here. So if you use a negative number, it has the effect of counting to the in the other direction from the end of the list. A good question there. Other questions now on slices, on looping over sys.argv.
Hi. So I remember very early on when we were talking about only having 2 decimal places in float value. Is that in the same vein? Because we use the colon point to f. So is that the same thing then? Why would the f be included then in the point to f as opposed to here when you just have the numbers?
A really good question, and it's just, the short answer is that context matters. So there's only so many keys on our keyboard, and so we sometimes use the same symbols for different things. So what you're alluding to is the format code in F-string for actually formatting a number, using a colon, using a period, using a number, using the letter F, and so forth. And that is very specific to the F-string feature of Python. This case has nothing to do with any of that syntax per se. This is just using a colon in a different context to solve this problem, to implement a slice. The authors of Python could have chosen another symbol, but honestly, looking down at my keyboard here, we don't have that many to choose from that are easy to type, so sometimes they have different meanings. A good question as well. Allow me to propose now that we take things further and move away from using only those modules, those libraries that Python comes with, to talk about more generally packages that exist. One of the reasons that Python is so popular and powerful these days is that there's a lot of third-party libraries out there as well, otherwise known as packages. Strictly speaking, Python itself has a term of art called a package, which is a module, essentially, that's implemented in a folder. Not just a file, but a folder. But more generally, a package is a third-party library that I can install on our own Mac or PC or our cloud server and gain access to even more functionality that other people have implemented for us. Now, one of the locations you can get all of these packages is called the PyPI website, the Python Package Index, which lives at this URL here. And this is a website that is searchable via the command line as well as via the web that allows you to download and install all sorts of packages. Even CS50 has some of its own packages in services like these. Now, there's a fun one out there that's a throwback to a command that's been around for years in command line environments called cowsay. Cowsay is a package in Python that allows you to have a cow.
What the heck? So I need to install this shit? Let's go, baby. Oh. Damn. Burp. Let me check. Oh, this so little. I don't know if it's already installed. Let me check it's already installed. Let's go. Not already installed. So I don't need it.
Has some of its own packages in services like these. Now, there's a fun one out there that's a throwback to a command that's been around for years in command line environments called cowsay. Cowsay is a package in Python that allows you to have a cow say something on your screen. If curious to read up on it, its own documentation is on pypi.org, specifically at this URL here. But how do you actually get the package into your system? Well, technically, you could figure out how to download the file and maybe unzip it and put it into the right location on your Mac or PC. But nowadays, a lot of languages, Python among them, has what's called its own package manager. This one here called pip, which is just one. So pip is a program that generally comes with Python itself nowadays that allows you to install packages onto your own Macs or PCs or cloud environment by just running a command, and then voila, you have access to a whole new library in Python that didn't come with Python itself, but now it's available on your system for you. Let's go back to VS Code here, and in my terminal window, I'm going to go ahead and type pip install cowsay. Now, what's going on here? Pip is the command, the package manager, and I want to install what package? The package called cowsay. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter here, and after a little bit of output,
Cowsay. Pip what?
code. Well, let's go ahead and see what this means. Let me go ahead and create a new file with code called say.py, because I want something to be said on the screen. Library in Python that didn't come. I'm going to go ahead and import cowsay. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter here, and
Pip install cowsay. Cowsay. All right. Should update run. All right, I did it.
after a little bit of output, it has successfully installed cowsay. Now, what does that mean? That means I can now go about importing this into my own code. Well, let's go ahead and see what this means. Let me go ahead and create a new file with code called say.py, because I want something to be said on the screen. And in my new tab here, I'm going to go ahead and import cowsay, which presumably is now installed. I'm now going to import sys as well, because I'd like to use some command line arguments in this program just so that I can run it quickly, and without using the input function, I can get the user's name immediately from the prompt. And let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to do a bit of error checking proactively this time, and rather than use less than or greater than, I'm this time going to say if the length of sys.argv does equal 2. So if the human is provided just the name of the program and their own first name, we're good to go. I'm going to do the following. I'm going to call a function called cow in the package called cowsay, and I'm going to pass in a string, hello, comma, and then, as in the past, I'm going to pass in just one string, because according to its documentation, it's not like print. I can't pass in comma this, comma that. I can only pass in one string, so I'm going to concatenate the contents of sys.argv bracket 1. So long as then I type in my name, David, after the name of this program, it should end up in sys.argv1, in which case this line 5 of code should concatenate hello with my name, with a space in between, and apparently a cow is going to say it. So let's see what happens here. Let me go ahead and clear my screen and increase the size of my terminal window. Let me go ahead and run python of say.py and type my name, David, and enter. There is the program called cowsay. It literally has a cow say something on the screen, and this is a throwback to a program from yesteryear that tended to come with a lot of systems. This is otherwise known as ASCII screen. Now, the size of my terminal window, concatenate hello with my name. It should end up in sys.
Let me check it out. If I import cowsay, import sys, I feed that. If len sysarg equal to hello, and I need to like input 2 elements there. Use them like my name, like Kevin and Suzuki, whatever. And then I will use the sys argument vector, the first, but this one means the second element I will use. And after, if I use a cowsay.cow, a cow, I'm gonna say my name.
.argv1. In which case this line 5 of code should concatenate hello with my name, with a space in between, and apparently a cow is going to say it. So let's see what happens here. Let me go ahead and clear my screen and increase the size of my terminal window. Let me go ahead and run python of say.py and type my name, David, and enter. There is the program called cowsay. It literally has a cow say something on the screen, and this is a throwback to a program from yesteryear that tended to come with a lot of systems. This is otherwise known as ASCII art. It's a textual way using just keys on your keyboard to print pictures of sorts on the screen. Now, we can really go down the rabbit hole here, and there's questionable academic value of doing so, so I'll do so just once. Turns out the cowsay package comes with other functions as well. One of those functions, for instance, is trex. And if I now increase the size of my terminal window, we'll perhaps see where we're going with this. Let me now run again Python of say.py. This time, let me not provide my name just to see if it's broken. It's still OK, because we have that if condition. If the length of sys.argv equals 2, and only if it equals 2 do we do anything. That's why we're not seeing anything here. Let me go ahead and cooperate now. Say.py space David. And it's no longer a cow, but if I zoom out on my screen, a T-Rex. Why? Just because. These are the things you can do once you know how to program. You can even package them up and make them freely available to others as open source software. For us, it's demonstrative of a feature more generally here, namely being able to install these third-party packages and how you might do so in Python. Now, I'll leave this up on the screen for a moment and see if there's any questions about cows or Tyrannosaurus rexes or packages more generally. I'm really qualified to speak to just one of those.
Hi, I've got 2 questions. It's a bit earlier than what's supposed to be. So the first question is, the packages that you're calling to use in the program, are they the same as, let's say, because I'm doing Java, the same as calling a class of a Java file in order to use its functions? And my second question is, what's the actual purpose of using command line arguments as you use? Because it's not really the best way to, as you say, be user friendly, where, as in, let's say the person who's using the program doesn't know what they want, what the program's asking them.
Really good questions. The first question about the comparison with Java. Python packages are similar to Java packages, where you have something.something.something at the top of your program that gives you access to a class or something else. Python itself supports classes, more on those down the road, and you can do very similar things in Python as you can do with Java. But the analog really is Python packages to Java packages here. As for command line arguments, you ask a good question. Why do we use them, especially if they're a little less user-friendly? They're a little less user-friendly to people who aren't in this Zoom, to be honest. You and I, as we learn more and more about programming and more about command line arguments, I dare say will become more comfortable with and tend to prefer the ability to customize commands using these command line arguments. Why? Productivity. It tends to make you faster because you get into the habit of knowing exactly how you can configure your software without having to manually answer questions. And case in point, all of this time have we been running Python of something.py. You could imagine not doing that. You could imagine typing only Python, hitting enter, and then you're prompted for the name of the file you want to run. So you type in something.py, and then it runs. Not a big deal, but I would argue that over time, you're going to get a little tired of that tedium, and you would much prefer to just automate the command again and again and again, especially with little conveniences like being able to hit up and down in your keyboard history so as to rerun those same commands. Automation is big too. If you emerge from a class like this and start using Python to automate processes at work or for personal projects or the like, the ability to specify all of your inputs on the one line just means you can get work done more quickly. So hands down, absolutely, using command line arguments is a more arcane feature of systems that most of us are no longer as familiar with because of Windows and Mac OS and other operating systems that have buttons and GUIs and menus. But the more comfortable you get with programming, I dare say the more you will tend to prefer these capabilities because they allow you to do things more quickly. Cool. With that said, allow me to propose that we take a turn toward yet another package that's particularly popular and just as easy to install, all toward an end of using APIs. Now, APIs are not something that's Python specific. More generally, an API is an application programming interface. And it can refer to Python files and functions, but often APIs really refer to third-party services that you and I can write code that talk to. Many APIs, but not all, live on the internet these days, so that so long as you have a browser or so long as you have some experience with Python programming or programming in any language, you can write code that in effect pretends to be a browser, connects to that third-party API on a server, and downloads some data that you can then incorporate into your own program.
Cool.
Now, how do you do this?
This is a very important thing, I think, because I was looking for some, like, I was like, I thinking, like, when I'm programming this shit, I'm doing this like offline mode, right? And when I'm programming here, when I'm like learning all this shit, when I'm learning all this code here and practicing here, I just doing like in my PC, but nobody have access about that. And how I gonna have access to the internet? Like, if I have like a website, a user gonna type something there, right? And they're gonna like type email and password. How am I gonna connect this like website server information to my program? So I think the API is the answer for that, I think.
Well, Python has a very popular package that you can install via pip called requests. The requests library allows you to make web requests, internet requests, using Python code, essentially as though you were a browser yourself. You can automate, therefore, the retrieval of URLs that start with HTTP or HTTPS. The documentation for this library is at a URL like this, but it too can be installed at the command line. And even though it's third party, it's one of the most popular and commonly used packages.
Okay, I think I have. I don't know. Maybe I have. Oh, baby. Let me check. I need to run this to check if I have a request. Okay, I think I have. Successfully install it. So I would have, baby. That's it, my bowl.
It's out there in Python, and
okay, I think we can like do this like a study here in the next video. I'm very excited about this shit because this is gonna make sense in my mind, I think, because I was thinking about how I'm gonna use the skills I already learning here to create something like connected with the internet, because there's no sense, there's no reason to like learn something here if you cannot like connect the internet your program, like everything. You need the internet. So here is the answer, I think. So that's it. Let's go, baby.